Imagine a world where every cross-country trip wasn't a matter of hours, but days, or even weeks. A world where major cities were isolated from one another, and small towns even more so. Hard to believe, right? Today we take highways for granted, but life before these massive road systems was vastly different. How did people get by before highways, and how did life change when they finally appeared? Stay tuned, because this video is going to explore how highways transform the world we live in. Highways are everywhere in the modern world. They connect cities, states, and entire countries, making travel fast, efficient, and convenient. But before these sprawling networks existed, the pace of life was much slower, and travel was far more difficult. In this video, we'll take a journey back in time to see what life was like before highways existed and how the introduction of highways changed everything, from the way we live to the way we work and the way we move. The challenge of traveling before highways was real. Roads were nothing like the multi-lane, smooth asphalt we know today. Dirt paths, gravel roads, and cobbled streets were the norm, making journeys long, uncomfortable, and dangerous. People had to navigate through rough terrain, face unpredictable weather, and often travel for days to cover distances we can now drive in mere hours. So, what did this mean for daily life? How did it affect trade, business, and the way people connected with each other? Let's dive into the reality of life before highways. Life before highways: slow, isolated, and local. Before the rise of highways, the majority of people rarely ventured far from their hometowns. Road infrastructure was poor, and most roads weren't designed for the cars that were starting to become popular in the early 20th century. If you needed to travel any significant distance, your options were limited, and none of them were quick or easy. Limited travel options. In the pre-highway world, people mainly relied on horse-drawn carriages, early automobiles, and railroads. Trains were often the most reliable way to travel long distances, but they weren't as flexible as cars. They only went where the tracks were laid. Automobiles offered more freedom, but they weren't efficient on the poor quality roads of the time. Even simple trips between cities took far longer than they do now. A journey from New York to Chicago, for example, could take days by car, compared to just a few hours on a modern highway today. The state of roads. Roads were typically made of dirt, gravel, or cobblestones, and they weren't maintained the way highways are today. You could expect mud during the rainy season, dust during the dry season, and potholes year-round. The lack of maintenance made travel not only slow but also dangerous. Flat tires, broken axles, and even overturned vehicles were common occurrences. This made long trips unpredictable and, in some cases, not worth the risk. Isolation of small towns and rural areas. Without an extensive road network, small towns were often cut off from the outside world. Many communities were largely self-sufficient, relying on local resources for food, materials, and trade. This meant that life moved at a slower pace, and opportunities for economic growth were limited. For rural areas especially, travel was an ordeal, and trips to nearby cities were infrequent. People stayed local out of necessity, as traveling longer distances was often too difficult or expensive. The introduction of highways, a transportation revolution. Everything changed with the introduction of modern highways. The idea of a national network of roads that connected cities and states wasn't new, but it wasn't until the 1950s that it became a reality. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, inspired by the Autobahn in Germany, signed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, which led to the construction of the U.S. Interstate Highway System. A transformative moment in American history. The birth of the interstate system. The creation of the Interstate Highway System was a massive undertaking, involving the construction of over 40,000 miles of roads across the United States. The goal was to create a network of highways that would connect major cities and facilitate both civilian and military transportation. Highways were built to be wide, durable, and efficient, designed for high-speed travel and to accommodate the growing number of cars on the road. Faster travel and new opportunities. With highways, travel times between cities were slashed dramatically. What used to take days by car now only took hours. This opened up new possibilities for people and businesses alike. Long-distance travel became accessible to the average person, making family vacations, cross-country moves, and business trips far more feasible. People could now live farther from where they worked, leading to the rise of suburbs as highways connected them to urban centers. The interstate system made it easier for businesses to move goods across the country, leading to economic growth and the rise of industries like trucking. Suburban growth and the American dream. Highways didn't just change how people traveled, they also changed where people lived. With the convenience of highways, suburbs became a popular option for families looking to escape the crowded, noisy cities. Highways connected suburbs to city centers, allowing people to commute to work while enjoying the space and quiet of suburban life. The 1950s saw a boom in suburban development, fueled in part by the accessibility that highways provided. Economic expansion. The construction of highways led to a boom in industries that supported travel and transportation. Gas stations, motels, diners, and other roadside businesses sprang up along the highways, creating jobs and boosting local economies. The trucking industry, in particular, benefited from the highways, as trucks could now transport goods across the country quickly and efficiently. Highways made it possible for businesses to expand their reach, connecting regional markets and promoting national trade. The downsides of highways, not all smooth sailing. While highways brought many benefits, they also had their downsides. The rapid expansion of the highway system had significant environmental, social, and economic consequences that we're still dealing with today. Environmental impact. Building highways required clearing vast amounts of land, disrupting ecosystems, and contributing to pollution. Forests were cleared, wetlands were drained, and wildlife habitats were destroyed to make way for the new roads. Additionally, the increased use of automobiles led to higher emissions and air pollution, which continues to be a major environmental issue today. Urban sprawl and decay. The development of highways contributed to the phenomenon of urban sprawl, where cities expanded outward into previously undeveloped land. While this allowed for the growth of suburbs, it also led to the decline of many urban centers. Highways often cut through existing neighborhoods, displacing residents and businesses. As people moved to the suburbs, many downtown areas were left neglected, leading to urban decay in some cities. Dependence on cars. One of the most significant long-term effects of highways is the increased dependence on automobiles. While highways made travel faster and more convenient, they also made cars essential for daily life in many parts of the country. Public transportation systems suffered as more people chose to drive, and today many areas lack adequate public transit options. This dependence on cars has contributed to issues like traffic congestion, air pollution, and a reliance on fossil fuels. So where does this leave us? Life before highways was simpler in some ways, with people staying closer to home and communities being more self-sufficient. But it was also slower and more isolated. The introduction of highways revolutionized travel, connecting cities, expanding economies, and giving people more freedom to explore the world. However, it also brought challenges, from environmental damage to urban sprawl and car dependency. The question remains, have highways improved our quality of life, or have they created new problems we're still struggling to solve? Highways transformed the world in ways that few could have predicted. They made long-distance travel accessible to everyone, fueled economic growth, and changed the way we live, work, and travel. Yet with those benefits came new challenges: environmental impact, urban decay, and a growing dependence on cars. As we look to the future, it's important to consider how we can balance the advantages of highways with the need for sustainability and community-focused development. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to subscribe for more.